Oh, thanks, Johnny. Hi, folks. Oh, how nice. I really enjoyed that part before everyone gets quiet, because that's all you getting back together. And I am going to hand over to Graham Cartwright a little bit later on. I just want to wait till all the tails stop swishing in the yard, and I've got one or two things to say. But Merry Christmas to you all. Hope you've all had a great year and you've got a big one lined up ahead. I had an interesting experience last weekend. I went out to a house in the country, and this family and all of their 20-something-year-old kids and a couple of aunties and real mix of a couple of tradies, and they had this thing where they get together every now and again, and about 20 around a big square table. It's about every month they do it. And they have this thing where for the entire time that you're having lunch, only one person speaks, which is kind of, you think about most tables, it's all these side conversations going on. And it was a great experience, because it was about, in the end, it was like 95% of your time at the table was listening, and actually listening to all the different views around the place. And one of the conversations was about how this practice isn't really widely done anymore, that sitting around and talking at length and listening. And it was really exciting, because we discovered so many different views, and then people would speak until they had finished their idea. And everyone was there's a real respect for the difference of views in the room. And on top of that, there was pretty vigorous debate, and people kind of climbed in and there was a structured interruption process, and a lovely lady with a chairman, she had a little bell at the table and she could pull it up if it got out of hand. And but it was really, it made me think about the importance of, we have so many media and social media for exchanging thoughts nowadays, but still the most valuable way to communicate still, and to really know that you've been understood and that somebody understands you, is one-to-one, and with eye contact and sitting and having time to, that thing we run out of called time, but taking time to actually spend. So it was an incredibly refreshing experience, and it made me think a lot also about what we do here and what you're all doing beforehand. And unfortunately you all have to be quiet for a while now, but it is great, go downstairs and afterwards, but the direct exchange of views, and I think that's one of the really satisfying things over the years, pulling everybody together here, is that there's also so much one-to-one communication that comes out of having listened to a great speaker as we have today, or speakers. And also one of the reasons that I, at the beginning, traditionally always throw out some crazy opinion about something or other that gets everyone, either people violently agree or violently disagree, but they do go away and talk about it. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, but I do enjoy winding everyone up a bit, because we all need to be aware or be awakened into current affairs, and I've always thought that was one of the other sort of important things that we did at the beginning. Now, little reminder about how this place operates, because I'm so grateful to Graham Cartwright, who's now taking on a big role in running the Sydney Mining Club with me, and he'll be running the show once I get out of here. But just really basic things to remember. It's the first Thursday of every month. You can block it out. You can invite your friends from interstate, and you can actually even nominate people as members, and we'll put them down onto our list, or you can just enter your own, maintain your own membership by email. I'm sure you do that already, obviously, you're all here. But it is important, it's your club, you have to grow it, you have to mention it whenever you meet someone, say, look, have you, you're a member, and we don't do all that. It's sort of up to you to grow your own club, and but we will help you if you want to send a list of people from your company, or you want to get them all signed up. Membership is free. And they're just principles some people still don't know. And you say, first Thursday, it's always been that, 26 years, we've always done it. And the other principle is that we go lunch, then evening, then lunch, then evening, lunch, then evening. So this is our last lunch of the year. Now, Graham Cartwright is, he'll be taking you through the rest of the day, is a volunteer. You know, I have been a volunteer for all that period, and we've had various volunteers, including the late, great Chris Fabin, who passed away a few years ago, and sorely missed. But, you know, I just want, whenever you're talking to Graham, just understand that he gives a lot, he's going to give you a lot of his time. He deserves your support. He's got much tighter organisational skills than I have, but I've also lost a couple of good organisers behind me. So, you know, I've sort of asked Graham to think of me as his team, and I'll be here to commentate or do whatever I'm asked to do as I'm required to. I'm a member just like you, so I'm not going anywhere, and I'll you know, we'll be helping to put together the you know, speakers for the coming year and doing everything I can, as I always have, since we started this in August 1997, I think it was, and then the Melbourne Mining Club, we also started that from Sydney and Brisbane. But so a little old thing waddles along, and that's just a few things that you can keep doing to keep up the membership of your club and keep growing it, keep strengthening it. We're here in the establishment, we're sold out. Why aren't we in the Ivy? Because they're very onerous contractual arrangements if you want to be in the Ivy. And so, you know, if the club gets bigger, we'll book the Ivy and we'll go right back there, but it's up to you to make this thing rock and roll. Give Graham every support in growing it. You know, people forget to put their emails back. You change company, you've got to change your email address so we can send you the notices, figures, right? So it is a wonderful thing. It's a joy that for me to have done it for this long. It's also a joy that Graham's stepping up, because he's meticulous and he's a lot of things that I'm not, and I really appreciate your help, Graham, and I'm right behind you with everything that you ever want to do. So without further ado, Graham, would you like to come and take over the reins and bump me off the end of the stage here?
Wonderful. Thanks, Julian.
Cool, mate.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just add my thanks. Thank you all for coming today to our last lunch for the year. As Julian said, we have got a sellout today. We started with a sellout with Ken Brisden at the start of the year, and we've finished the year with a sellout today. So lithium prices were pretty high in February this year, and I'm pleased to see that my gold buying has been successful, and I've pushed the gold price through $2,000 just in time for one of the leading gold companies in Australia to come and speak. So we've got two speakers today to inform you on the opportunities in gold, copper and decarbonisation. Jake Klein, Executive Chairman, and Laurie Conway, CEO of Evolution Mining. We've also got a 5-minute interlude from club member Alan Lawrenson, who's got a new book on energy transitions technologies. Finally, club member Simon Kidston will be joining us for Q&A with his wealth of experience on Genex's development of the pumped hydro scheme at the former Kidston gold mine. The combination of assets provides Evolution with an exciting future as one of the leaders in the Australian mid-cap gold sector. We will now focus on the optimisation of the Evolution asset base and delivery of the next stage of growth opportunities. Jake's slightly bemused there. Did I write that? About 2011. So began Evolution Mining, a merger of Catalpa Resources and Conquest Mining. Of the 5 directors that joined Catalpa board two were Jake Klein and Laurie Conway, both with us here today. 4 of the 5 assets of the company are still in production, but only one is still with Evolution, Mount Rawdon, which we're going to hear something about its future today. We'll shortly hear from Laurie Conway on the current portfolio of long-life assets in Western Australia, Queensland and Canada. Importantly though, the number of mines in New South Wales has doubled this week with the acquisition of the North Parks mine from CMOC. It's appropriate at this point to welcome and acknowledge the presence of some guests in the audience today. In particular, I'd like to welcome the Mayor of Bland Shire, Brian Monaghan, the Mayor of Forbes Shire, Phyllis Miller, and Ali Coe, GM from the Wiradjuri Condobolin Corporation. I'd also like to thank our generous sponsors, whose banners you can see behind me, to the right and to the left. Please take note of them and use their services if possible. All of Evolution's acquisitions since its formation have been long-term exercises. Mungari in West Australia, Ernest Henry in Queensland, Red Lake in Canada. One acquisition, however, stands out for further mention as being the furthest down the pathway of Evolution. Cowal Gold Mine was acquired by Evolution from Barrick in May 2015. At the time, it had resources of 1.6 million ounces, resources of 3.4 million ounces, and a mine life to 2025, which is only 18 months away. Now it has reserves of 4.3 million ounces, resources of 8.8 million ounces, and a mine life to 2040. A significant achievement, you'll agree. But to tell us more on Evolution's assets, I'd like to welcome Laurie Conway to present.
Thank you, Graham, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a real privilege to be able to present about Evolution today at the Sydney Mining Club. To Julian, Graham and Linda, congratulations on another successful year and a magnificent event today. I echo what Julian says, that it's important that we maintain membership of the Mining Club, because the work that the club does in promoting the mining industry in Sydney and more broadly in New South Wales is very valuable, and on behalf of everyone here in the room today, we do thank you. To the gold sponsors, AME Group and Bear Del Bear Australia, and all the other sponsors, thank you for your ongoing contribution and support to the club. When I was told today that the event was sold out, I thought, was this due to the wonderful work that the Sydney Mining Club does? Or was it because everyone wanted to come to listen to the recently anointed legend of the gold industry and the main speaker today, Jake Klein, who will no doubt razzle and dazzle every one of us with his normal style of presentation? But then twigged for me that, as Julian said, this is the last lunch of the year. Therefore, everyone really is coming here today to meet up with industry colleagues and friends for lunch and a few drinks. And because it's Thursday, that means we're going to have a few more drinks after the lunch and go downstairs, as Julian said. And as is normal today, in today's world, we can all work from home tomorrow. I'm hoping that many of the Evolution team, who has worked extremely hard in the last few weeks, takes that approach. The main focus of the presentation today, though, is about the exciting things that we're doing at the Cowal operation here in New South Wales, which, as Graham said, until Tuesday was our only asset in New South Wales, but we now double with the acquisition of North Parks. I'll touch a little bit on North Parks in the presentation, but really today's focus is about the quality of the asset at Cowal and what it does in deriving value for the region and for the state of New South Wales. As Graham said, we're very pleased to have the Mayor of the Bland Shire here, Brian Monaghan, the Mayor of the Forbes Shire, Phyllis Miller, and Ali Coe from the Wiradjuri Condobolin Corporation. Thank you for making the effort to come down here, but more importantly, thank you for the important role that you play in making Cowal such a successful operation for us. Evolution respects and supports the Indigenous communities in which we operate, both here and in Australia. We acknowledge also the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, where we are gathering for lunch today. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and to all First Nations, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This slide shows the customary disclosure regarding forward-looking statements, and everyone here is reminded not to place undue reliance on the information, and you should form your own views. So just a snapshot for those of you who don't know about Evolution. Our market capitalisation is approximately $7 billion, and as shown there, we have a very large mineral resource and reserve base, with our gold endowment being 30 million ounces and 11 million ounces respectively, while the copper endowment is 1.8 million tonnes and 1 million tonnes respectively. Following the completion of the North Parkes acquisition, our FY24 guidance is 789,000 ounces and 62,500 tonnes at a sector-leading low all-in sustaining cost of $1,340 per ounce. Since 2013, when we implemented our dividend policy and paid our first dividend, we've paid 21 consecutive dividends, which has returned over $1.1 billion to our shareholders, in addition to the share price growth that we've been able to achieve. At Evolution, our strategy and approach has always been to build a business that prospers through the cycle. This has not changed since we formed in 2011, and the strategy remains clear and very consistent. I think what you'll see when we talk about North Parkes, it's very much aligned to the strategy. And in the recent high-cost inflationary environment, it has shown that this strategy is a strategy that works. We want a concentrated portfolio of high-quality, long-life, low-cost operations that are in first-world jurisdictions. We're willing to take appropriate geological, operational and financial risks that enables us to generate adequate returns for our shareholders, and that is backed by having a very strong balance sheet. The realisation of value is driven by how we execute against the strategy, and it is underpinned by our values, which we must live out every day. Those being safety, excellence, accountability and respect. So very briefly, on Tuesday, we announced entering into agreements with CMOC to acquire the 80% interest in the North Parkes mine, located right here in our backyard in New South Wales. It is very close, as you can see on the map, to our Cowal operation. We genuinely consider ourselves privileged and honoured to be the new custodians of this asset, along with our partners Sumitomo and Triple Flag. It's an operation we've reviewed many times over our journey, and it is one that we thought would be an excellent fit and addition to our portfolio. It's a reliable, well-established, long-life copper and gold operation. It fits extremely well in our strategy that I just outlined and will become our 6th operation in the portfolio later this month. What is particularly attractive to us is the very long mine life that ahead of it of around 30 years. It's an operation that's been operating for 30 and has at least 30 more to go. It's had a consistent track record of reliably and predictably delivering, and it is one that is in a cash generation mode moving forward in the next few years after a period of recent capital investment. As I said, we look forward to taking ownership of this later this month, which we think will be a long and rewarding period for our shareholders and all stakeholders. Importantly, at Evolution, we really do talk about making Evolution a career highlight for our people, be they our employees or our contractors. Having a highly engaged and diverse workforce is fundamental to being able to deliver against our plans and against our strategy. When you consider that labour costs in our business comprises around 46% of our cost base, this makes them one of our most largest and valuable assets in the organisation. In terms of diversity, we acknowledge that we must do more as a company and as an industry. Our short-term priority is to lift participation rate of women at Evolution to the mining industry average and then to go beyond that. We also continue to work on increasing the level of Indigenous employees in our business, which currently sits at a low 6%. We have strong partnerships with New South Wales Mining and the Gold Industry Group, and specifically at Cowal, which employs approximately 500 people and have around 100 long-term contractors, where our workforce is mainly residential, with 75% living in the Bland and Forbes Shires. This was a good segue into Cowal and where it sits into our portfolio. And when you look at it, it is absolutely a cornerstone asset for Evolution, contributing materially to the group last year with 42% of our production and 39% of our group operating cash flow. Production's guided to increase 16% this year to around 320,000 ounces following the commissioning of a new underground mine earlier this year. It comprises 29% of our resources and 41% of our reserves, and importantly, has a very long life ahead of it. I really do think the best way to introduce such a world-class asset is via a very short video.
Located 350 kilometres west of Sydney, near West Wyalong, on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people, is Evolution Mining's Cowal operation. And it's here where Evolution has safely mined gold since 2015, transforming the asset into a world-class open pit and underground gold operation.
At Cowal, we are committed to safe and sustainable operations. We embed sustainability into everything we do across our business to ensure it delivers true value to all stakeholders.
With our underground mine now in production, we are well positioned to deliver 320,000 ounces this year. This is an exciting time for the business, with the mining lease renewed through till 2045 for both open pit and underground operations. Our operations are adjacent to Lake Cowal, and we pride ourselves on the environmental management practices. We proudly employ approximately 500 people, in which 75% of those choose to live locally, and I am one of them. Since Evolution acquired Cowal, the community of West Wyalong has been transformed. Community is really important to us, and we can work closely with the Bland, Lachlan and Forbes Shires. Something we are really proud of is our relationship with the Wiradjuri Condobolin Corporation. We recently showcased this and took the receipt of the New South Wales Mining Community Awards for the work that we did together to set up Kalari.
One of the highlights of our partnership has been a pathway for other young people to enter into full-time work with Evolution, and at the moment, I think in the last few years, to date, we have about 11 young Indigenous Wiradjuri people that have moved into mainstream employment out at Lake Cowal.
It's increased our population, it's increased our housing supply, we've had more services as a result of the mine. We've got new preschools and other facilities. I can honestly say that the mine has brought great benefits to the Bland Shire.
With a current mine life to 2040 and a feasibility study underway to expand the open pit, the future looks bright for Cowal and local communities.
I trust that gives you a good insight into how good an operation Cowal is, and our main actor there, who I didn't mention earlier, Joe Mammon, who is the General Manager, is also in the room today. As noted in the video, we acquired Cowal in 2015, and at that time the mine life was actually due to run out next year. Since then, we've invested over $1.5 billion in multiple projects to improve the returns on the investment and to extend the mine life. We've successfully extended the mine life by a total of 16 years from 2024 to 2040, with plenty of options to extend that further. We've also increased the production rate against the backdrop of a declining open pit grade through the development of the new underground mine. During the period of ownership, we estimate the economic value to the region of $1.6 billion and have paid over $500 million in royalties. As I've just said, there's many options to extend the mine life at Cowal. We are undertaking a feasibility study for open pit continuation, having recently completed a public display of the project, which has been very positively received by both the community and the regulators. The project will extend the open pit operations by 10 years and extend the overall operations out to 2042. We continue to engage with the community and regulators on this project to ensure that we can deliver it in a socially responsible and sustainable manner. While CAL has fully repaid all of its acquisition and subsequent capital investment at a very good rate of return for our shareholders, what is just important for us is that we are delivering to other stakeholders, including the community in which we operate and to the state. We aim to deliver a sustainable long-term economic benefit. As this slide shows, we have created a material economic benefit to the local and regional areas, as well for the state government. Since owning CAL, we've delivered over $500 million of economic benefit to the total regional areas, local and regional areas, and $140 million in royalties. However, when you look at the gold bars there on the right, you'll see the significant opportunity that the extensions that we've been able to achieve from 2024 out to a mine life now of 2040, it sees that there's a 200% increase in benefits for both the local and regional area of about $1 billion and a 230% extra royalties to the state government equating to $320 million. Our view is that the regions that generate the royalties should be receiving their fair share of those royalties, and unfortunately that is not the case, and it is something that we as an organisation, along with our local shires, want to continue to work with the government on. Sustainability is also integrated into everything we do, and it's a key component of being able to continue to operate. We work hard in all areas of sustainability. As Ali outlined on the video, we have a close working relationship with the Wiradjuri people, and the award for the Galari Agricultural Project being our most recent mutual success. We provide support in many ways with the community in the Central West and the benefits mentioned by Mayor Monaghan. The floods last year impacted many of our employees and surrounding people. Many of our employees spent days or weeks helping out while Evolution provided financial and in-kind support. The metal we produce is also being used in iconic sporting trophies, with gold from the operation being used in the 2016 and 2022 Melbourne Cups, while silver from the operation will be used to make all of the trophies for the 2025 Australian Open. So in summary, we continue to focus on safe and reliable delivery while focusing on margin over volume. This is at all of our operations, not just CAL. CAL has transformed into a world-class operation, which is a cornerstone asset in our portfolio. It has multiple organic growth options to deliver long-term returns and ultimately create sustainable benefits for all of our stakeholders. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Laurie, for an informative speech on CAL and how it's really evolved over time. As an interlude between our two speakers from Evolution, we have author Alan Lawrenson with us today. Pardon me. A few years ago, Alan launched a book at the Sydney Mining Club, but he's back again today with a new book, which is Australia's Looming Energy Crisis. Alan.
So, looking for the technology. Thank you very much to the Mining Club for allowing me to talk today. Back. That is basically, the book that I have laboured over for last year. I got quite concerned about where Australia is going as far as energy is concerned, because if we don't have low-cost energy, we don't have too much else to go with it. So this has been one of my little projects for a year. So I'll give you a little bit of a flavour of what's involved. As Graham said, sorry? Is it? Okay, sorry, thank you. I didn't notice it, sorry about that. As Graham said, I launched a number of books previously. They were all on prostate cancer, as a prostate cancer survivor. And we did the one on nearest to me here a month before COVID struck. Instead of selling 10 or 20,000 copies worldwide, it still became a bestseller, but it was a far, far less amount because my prostate support groups all disappeared because of COVID. I had a database of 1,000. So I decided now to move on to something else. Just the back cover of the book gives a couple of quotes from industry experts. The first one is Paul Broad, I call him Paul B there, and he says, it's just not impossible, it is impossible as far as what is being done to meet the governmental targets. By the way, I don't bucket the government because I think their plan overall is reasonably sound. The time frame is impossible. That's the issue involved in this whole situation. And there are a few comments from others that I put in front of you. The book is covers every aspect of energy in Australia. We look at the present energy grid, we look at coal, gas, we looked at hydro and pumped hydro. I've got a chapter on pumped hydro, and mainly focused on Snowy and the Genex project. We look at the energy, the EV market, which is very important. I also look at the critical minerals. There's 30 pages on critical minerals. I also talk about the hydrogen economy that everybody's talked about. And then I spend 6 chapters talking about nuclear. I had the privilege of working in the nuclear industry for a year, some years ago. And by the way, my background is that of a technocrat. I worked 45 years in technologies over A to Z and so forth, but I've been retired for a few years. And the third last chapter is, can we keep the lights on? I do a critical analysis state by state as far as whether we will keep the lights on. And 2 states are quite vulnerable, in my view, as far as that's concerned. Types of things that are in the book. There's a critical minerals criticality analysis, big word, and I try to illustrate by the depth of colour the vulnerability we have as far as the availability of enough raw material or commodities to go into the battery production situation. And I suggest that graphite is the most critical, followed by manganese and so forth. I think nickel we seem to be pretty well okay. But just to close off, the book queries that these types of things. Will Toyota's solid-state batteries, which are going to come into play in 2026 with a whole new range of vehicles, how will that affect the lithium demand? Big question mark. And what's happening in that solid-state battery development program is absolutely, it's top secret. So that's something to look forward to. The other issue is, how are we going to install 600 million solar panels? That's 250 new ones, and then we've got the replacement market because they won't last till 2050. It's impossible to install the number. And then somebody raised to me yesterday after my golf match, he said, how are we going to recycle all that stuff? Unbelievable project. And of course, the poles and wires, we've got a few people from country towns here today, and they all probably have seen the poles and wires debate developing in these renewable energy zones that the government are proposing. And the book also is bold enough to say, how can we build nuclear plants on time and on budget? Because the world has not had a good record. But I've looked closely at the ones that have done a good job, and I've determined what they've done to try and achieve that. So that's covered in the book as well. The book is $35 a head, and I'll be next to the Ioneer stand once the speakers have concluded, and I'll be happy to. I have only limited copies available at the moment because my bulk printing hasn't arrived, so I had to improvise in the meantime. So looking forward to talking to you at that time. And thank you again, the Sydney Mining Club. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. So I encourage you, if that's of interest to you, that after the lunch is over, you find Alan over there next to the Ioneer display and buy a copy of his book, and he might even sign it for you. Now, our last speaker today needs little introduction. Jake Klein is speaking, however, on a topic which is slightly left field for miners in pumped hydro. In 2015, a young upstart company called GenX Power listed on the ASX. It had a vision to construct a pumped hydro scheme at an abandoned mine site in North Queensland called the Kingston Gold Mine. 8 years later, this 250 megawatt project is in construction. And since that time, we have seen a few other projects announced and started. The 2 gigawatt Snowy 2.0 and the Queensland Government's 2 gigawatt Barumba, and potentially a 5 gigawatt Pioneer Burdekin project. One project that has had a less high profile is Evolution's project at Mount Rawdon, also a potential 2 gigawatts, so the same size as Barumba and Snowy 2.0. Mount Rawdon pumped hydro is an exciting project on many levels, but to tell us more, Jake Klein.
Thanks. Afternoon. Hopefully everyone is now easing into their second drink, and this will make my talk a little more interesting and palatable. Gillian and Graham, thanks so much for inviting me back to the Mining Club. I first presented here at this great club in 2001. That's 22 years ago now, when I tried to convince you that gold mining in China was a great opportunity. And over the next 8 years, between 2001 and 2009, I think we all learned a lot about China. And we did, as Sino Gold, manage to mine gold profitably in that country. Thanks, Charlie. In 2011, I presented for the first time the vision and strategy of a newly formed company called Evolution. And as you've just heard from Laurie, over the last 12 years, we've been able to assemble an amazing portfolio of long-life, low-cost assets, which has been made even better this week by the acquisition of the iconic North Parkes mine located right here in New South Wales and being returned back to Australian hands. Our Cowal gold mine in the Bland Shire is located only an hour away from North Parkes, and in many ways it was our great experience at Cowal that motivated us to acquire another operation in that region, the Central West. So thank you, Brian, Ali and Phyllis, for making our experience so good that we were willing and able to acquire our next property nearby. Thank you. So here I am, back again in December 2023, with the task of convincing you that whilst Mount Rawdon operation may have the shortest mine life in our portfolio, the opportunity to transition the mine to a renewable energy project means that it has the potential to be one of the most valuable assets in our portfolio. Now that's going to be a challenge, because after more than 20 years of continuous mining operations, in the middle of next year, mining is scheduled to stop, and that will bring gold production to an end after we process the remaining low-grade stockpiles that are on surface. But we have been working very hard for the story not to simply end there. And in potentially the next phase of its life, I think Mount Rawdon could not only be valuable for Evolution shareholders and our partners in this project, ICA, but could be a much needed good news story for our industry. Because over the next few minutes, I'm hoping to convince you that this depleted gold mine can be turned into a valuable 100-year renewable infrastructure asset, generating clean energy, cheaper power, and creating regional jobs. Like everything I've presented in the past at the Mining Club, I always believe a business opportunity needs to be based on good strategy. As one of my good friends once told me, who's in the startup space, and he's done a number of successful startups, you cannot build a business with a solution looking for a problem to fix. You have to have a solution to fix a problem. And here I think the problem we're facing is without precedent and indisputable. Hopefully this is going to work. It is. I think a good starting point is to step back and look at global carbon emissions. So here's a chart that tracks emissions over the last 170 years. Over that period, they've increased 30 times, with the biggest increases in the post-World War II era. I think it is now widely accepted and scientifically proven that this is contributing to increasing temperatures and climate extremes. And I think even everyone in this room would agree to that. This recognition culminated in the so-called Paris Agreement, which is a legally binding international treaty on climate change adopted by 196 parties at the COP21, the UN Climate Change Conference, which was held in 2015. Its overarching goal, the Paris Agreement, is to hold, and I'm quoting here, to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees Celsius and above, which is just 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And there's an and here, and pursue efforts, and I'm quoting again, to limit the temperature increases to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. For context, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, greenhouse gas emissions globally must decline by 45% by 2030. So it sounds pretty good. Multinational commitments by 196 countries to get this solved. So how are we going? Not that good. Because we're actually going really badly. Because compared to 2010 levels, emissions are projected to rise by 9%, when they really need to fall by 45%. So where does Australia fit in all of this? Well, it's definitely in the newspapers every day, and I can tell you as someone who's sat on a public company board since 2001, it is front and centre of board discussions today and probably wasn't even mentioned in 2001. Climate change has definitely become front page news and remains highly politicised. I think it's fair to say we were slow adopters as a country of a transition to renewable energy, but we now seem to have conceded the need for action, and we are now well and truly committed. In fact, we've become so committed, we now, by global standards, have aggressive targets which the federal government has set. They have committed our country to go from a current base of 36% renewables to 82% by 2030. That's a huge, huge lift in 7 years. And that challenge is unbelievably big. Because as you can see, we are still largely dependent, almost 50% of our energy is generated by coal. And to deliver on our commitments, we'll need to construct 28 gigawatts of new wind and solar capacity and 13 gigawatts of new storage capacity to support that wind and solar. To say that this is going to cost tens of billions of dollars is a massive understatement. But it's not even the cost that's enormous. It's the sheer magnitude of the scale of construction that's required to construct this infrastructure. Not only the generation and the storage, which we've talked about, but the new transmission lines required to connect this new grid. The government is right in calling it rewiring the nations, because that is literally what is required. So I hope that defines the problem clearly. And building on advice, again, that I've previously been given, someone once told me that one of the greatest commercial opportunities is a government policy that doesn't have a credible plan or solution to deliver on it. And here is one. Whilst I don't claim to have the whole solution, we do think we have a very important piece of that. Because here's Queensland, and they committed to a Green Olympics in 2032 which the government made as an undertaking to hold the Olympics in Brisbane. That's also a huge jump from 23% to 70% by 2032, which, as I understand, is contractually committed by the Queensland government, or at least a stated principle of why the Games was awarded to Brisbane at that time. But in Australia, let's look on the bright side for a minute. We do have an abundance of sunshine. That's the bright side, which is useful for solar generation, and we do have lots of wind. We, of course, also have lots of space. So there is plenty of capacity to generate solar and wind power. But what happens when the wind isn't blowing, or at night when the sun isn't shining? And that's why our partners, ICA, who are represented here by Michael Seedy and Aaron Simcock, who really have been renewable experts. They run ICA Partners as a leading advisory group in the renewable space. And they're the brains behind all of this, by the way. They recognise that firming, which is really the storage of energy, is the most strategic and valuable part of our country's transition to renewables. And as one of their founders, Michael Seedy, told me over dinner the other night, they literally used Google Maps and sent people out into the field to inspect potential sites that could be locations for pumped hydro projects. That's right, isn't it, Michael? The key attributes they were looking for were head heights, which is basically the vertical drop from the upper reservoir to the lower reservoir, closeness to the grid, and preferably a disturbed site, which would make permitting a lot easier. 4 years ago, after an extensive search, they approached us and said they'd identified Mount Rawdon as the most suitable location for a pumped hydro generator in Australia. We didn't, and I certainly didn't, really know what they were talking about. But we did think it was a great way to close a mine that was depleting of its gold. So we agreed to a 50-50 deal where we could both fund the feasibility study. So 4 years and $20 million later, I am a true believer. What is pumped hydro? Do I need to click this again? I think I do. So a pumped hydro generator is essentially a giant battery. When energy demand and prices are high, water is released from the upper reservoir, flowing downhill with tremendous force, which is effectively the energy. It flows through the turbines, which you can see turning now, and in our case there'll be 6, and generates energy which is transmitted into the power grid for distribution. Then when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing and electricity prices are cheap, the water in the lower reservoir is pumped back up to the upper reservoir. And so you have the cycle again. So it's a closed circuit essentially. The head height is really important because it's a key factor in determining how efficiently the energy can be generated. And in our case, as ICA identified, 550 metres is really, really high. By comparison, and Graham, it's only a planned Barumba pumped hydro. It is in the strategic plan, but it's got a long, long way to be developed. I believe there are turtles on the site which could be problematic. But the Barumba pumped hydro scheme, which will generate a similar amount of power, only has a head height of 330 metres. The other attributes that Mount Rawdon has that makes it competitively advantageous is that it's located only 26 kilometres from the East Coast 250 kVA transmission line, and even better, the proposed new so-called supergrid, the 500 kVA line, effectively runs right through Mount Rawdon. The open pit, which has already been mined out for gold, we've spent over $1 billion mining there in costs, will be repurposed as the lower reservoir. And being situated on a disturbed sites with good access, a good workforce, site services, and a massive database of environmental and geotechnical information also provide the project with a huge competitive advantage. And I'm sure Simon in the Genex Kidston example, that was a huge contributing to the ability to get it permitted and get it going fairly quickly. The project is large and importantly with government support could be operational by 2030, so it could contribute to that stated aim of having a Green Olympics. The feasibility study envisages a multi-billion-dollar project to generate up to 2 gigawatts of power for 10 hours or 20,000 megawatt hours of storage, and that is a lot of power. It could power up to 2 million homes in Brisbane. It's sufficiently big that it could reduce Queensland emissions by up to 3%. And in a study, independent study by Axel Allen on the economic impact of the project, which will form part of the feasibility study and is now completed, the Axel Allen report, the project could reduce Queensland power prices by approximately $27 per megawatt hour. That's a reduction, and it would result in a saving of almost $13 billion. So we're miners in this room, or most of us are, so what could it do for the mining industry? And to give you a sense of the scale, it could power 70 SAG mills for 24 hours. I'm not sure there's 70 SAG mills in Queensland, but it could power a lot of SAG mills. Well done, Millie, for this slide. The project's advancing rapidly. In October 2022, the Queensland Government gave the project a coordinated project status. Earlier this year, we completed a geotechnical drilling program that identified the best location for the power chamber. The turbines, which are critical specialist, large and expensive pieces of equipment, we've shortlisted 2 potential suppliers and are engaged with them. The flora and fauna studies have also been completed, and the next really important step is the environmental impact study, which will be submitted in the next couple of years. And I cannot overemphasize here just the social license that Mount Rawdon has, and Joe Mamam has the advantage of having just been the general manager of Mount Rawdon before Cal. He can verify what an amazing social license Mount Rawdon has. It probably has the best social license across our group other than Cal. But it's local workforce. The mine started I think it's 25 years ago, by Nick Giorgetta. It employs a lot of local people in the Mount Perry region. It just has an incredible desire. It originally had an 8-year mine life. This will be, I think, by the time it closes, 25 years later, and it's had tremendous support from the local community, and it reflects just how important that social license really is. We aim to have the feasibility study completed by June next year. Importantly, all the work done to date in building the case and all the work we've done so far suggests that Mount Rawdon will be commercially very attractive and have the lowest risk and lowest cost of capacity when ranked against all other pumped hydro projects in Australia that are subject to construction. So I don't want to be upset Simon, because his is already in construction. In concluding, I do want to leave you with a few thoughts that hopefully triangulates this whole story. Firstly, I do hope that I've convinced you that whilst Mount Rawdon sits in a very lonely space in our portfolio, being very short mine life, it is a valuable and strategic asset to us. Secondly, the amount of copper that is required to build the required renewable capacity, the transmission lines that is required to connect them, and the electric motor vehicles that will be needed to be built, which, by the way, have 4 kilometres of copper wires in every electric motor vehicle, will be very, very good for the copper price, and hence our acquisition of North Parkes and Ernest Henry will be well exposed to that. Thirdly, the cost of all of this is going to be unbelievably high if we are going to get anywhere near the renewable targets. Governments will literally have to spend trillions and trillions of dollars, which is going to be inflationary, and that's going to be good for gold. So, pulling all of this together, and as we enter the holiday season, it seems appropriate to end with a quote that is so relevant for everyone in this room who share the love of our industry. It's from Max Planck, the father of quantum mechanics, who won the Nobel Physics Prize in 1918, when he said something that I think may be even more relevant today when we think about the challenge of this transition, where he said, That's where we're at. I've talked about all of that. When he said, mining is not everything, but without mining, everything is nothing. So Julian, thank you for the work you've done at the Mining Club. Been incredible. I thought you'd like this quote, because I think it reflects what we all think and believe in the sector. It's what we love about the sector, and you've done an unbelievable job at the Sydney Mining Club. We thank you for that effort. We look forward to obviously seeing your ongoing membership and involvement, and I'm sure advice to Graham. But well done, and thank you on behalf of everyone here. Happy holidays, or are we having some Q&A?
You're in the firing line over there.
Okay.
If Simon and Laurie would like to come up and take a chair, don't. No, the first question's for you. The benefit you've got, of course, is you've just scoffed your dessert down. Don't worry, Jake, it wasn't really worthwhile. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for the lunch and the presentations that you've given. I guess a simple yes or no question, Laurie. Do you think that the acquisition of Cal has lived up to your wishes? Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Not Jake's, though.
Oh, okay.
He's got high aspirations.
And how long will it take for Mungari, Ernest Henry and Red Lake to go through that evolution process that Cal has?
Well, I think Ernest Henry's already there. It's absolutely out delivering in terms of we've doubled the reserves in the first 18 months and extended the mine life by 17 years. I think with Mungari, it's on a journey, having acquired the Kundana, East Kundana assets from Northern Star and approving the plant expansion in June, which will double the processing capacity, means in the next few years it will transition to that. And with Red Lake, it's a sort of a longer journey as we learn how to bring a very old style of mining into the modern mining methods and approaches.
And I guess to bring that all together, how would you then compare the potential of North Parks with Cal when you acquired both of those assets?
I mean, it's only early, but I think when you look at something that's been operating 30 years, and when we visited it last weekend, you know, it's just had $50 million US invested in it to upgrade the processing capacity to 7.6 million tonnes. It's had a block cave development, so when you look at it, it's got 30 years ahead. For us, it's going to be how do we optimise the multiple mining areas like we have at Cal. So I think Jake rightfully said on the call on Tuesday, our first obligation over the first couple of years is to continually deliver reliably what we have been doing and then look at what the options are before we try and do, which is similar to what we did at Cal. It took us a few years before we really got going and expanding it.
And Simon, what advice would you have for Jake as he heads down this route of pumped hydro?
Look, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge, I guess, the vision they've had to turn a potential liability when a mine comes to its natural conclusion into what could be a very profitable long life asset. And essentially what they're developing is critical infrastructure which has a fundamental importance in the energy transition, and to do so at great value to their shareholders, to turn a liability into an asset, I think presents a phenomenal business opportunity. In terms of sort of the challenges that one faces when looking to convert a mine site to energy storage, in many ways it comes down to the financing and contracting structure. And the model that we adopted as a relatively modest public company was to do so with a long-term energy partner that provided revenue certainty. And on the back of that, project finance was able to provide the bulk of the capital requirement. Clearly Evolution's in a different financial position, so they may be in a position to capture a lot of the upside, which you can see in the wholesale energy markets.
And Simon, just following on from that, you've obviously been deeply involved in the Queensland energy scene for a number of years. The current government's committed to variable renewables, but in Dubai in the last week at COP28, we've seen major users of power around the world commit themselves to tripling nuclear generation by 2050, except for a handful of companies like Germany and Australia. If at some stage we change horses, what does that mean for pumped hydro?
Look, in many ways, pumped hydro is ideally suited to manage and smooth intermittent generation from wind and solar. But in many places in the world, it's paired with either coal or nuclear, in that pumped hydro is a very rapid response generator that can turn on and respond to peaks in demand, where of course coal and nuclear tend to be base load, churning away, chugging along 24 hours, and therefore are not suited to react to the evening peaks and the morning peaks in energy markets. So pumped hydro has a very, I think, fit place for either renewable markets or ones with nuclear.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first power generating asset you installed at the Kidston mine was a solar farm. Where did that go?
So that asset's now been operating for 5 or 6 years. It's generated strong cash flows for the business that supported the costs.
Physically though, where is it sited?
Oh, so where's it? So in fact, it's sited on the former tailings dam for the gold mine, and what we found was that tailings dams are ideally suited for solar farms. You've got homogeneous ground conditions and therefore potentially very low cost construction characteristics. So perhaps another idea to look into, Jake, when you look at expanding your business in due course.
This is what we're here for. Trying to get some idea synergies. But Jake, if we look at the GenX project, if I remember correctly, around about $800 million for 250 megawatts of capacity. What does that mean for Mount Rawdon? Around about $6 billion. And I think you've also, unlike Simon, who had 2 different pits, you've got an upper reservoir to construct. Does that add extra costs?
Yeah, so I mean, our project is roughly 8 times the size of GenX's, so I think your estimate is not bad. 8 times 800 would give you pretty close to where we're thinking it's going to land. It's a big project. For Evolution shareholders, relax. We are not going to fund it off our own balance sheets. As Simon said, a key to this is the financing structure, and again, we're lucky to be in the hands of ICA as our partners, because they have taken people down this path before. Offtake is clearly an important part of the financing, and then the construction certainty. So those are the things that we're looking at. But we're looking at various options, whether it ends up as Evolution Energy and you get an in-specie distribution of some scrip, or whether it actually gets sold, which is, I think, Laurie's preferred approach, and goes down to reducing some of our debt. So there are a whole lot of options between now and the end of next year. But just to add to the nuclear question, I mean, I hope what I presented today gives you a sense of just the scale of what needs to be built. Like, this has to have everything in the mix. There's no one single bullet solution over here. We just need to get our heads around the fact, and someone needs to start having the discussion, that this infrastructure is not free. So someone is going to have to pay for it. Either it's taxpayers, because it is really national infrastructure. All companies and individuals pay when they use it, but at some point in time, we've been using a coal-fired grid, and we've all saying we want to go to a renewable grid. That is a new piece of national infrastructure that is going to be expensive.
Okay. And I guess a question to the panel collectively, do you think this now means that pumped hydro schemes are a future of mine rehabilitation?
Well, I think as the ICA group have done, they've done an extensive search. The attributes that are required to make a pumped hydro project suitable, and yet, Simon, our tailings dam will also be covered with panels, solar panels, but Michael keeps telling me that that's very small relative to a 2 gigawatt project. We need a bigger tailings dam. But at the end of the day, it's got to have attributes that are suitable to pumped hydro, and that head height, as I understand it, is absolutely critical because it really is the determinant of how efficiently the energy can be generated as it uses gravity to come down through the tunnels into those turbines.
If I can just add one comment, I think it's an opportunity for people that are managing operating assets with a closure at some point in the future. They can plan potentially to allow a future use. So simple decisions made during the operation phase could potentially be very helpful, or disadvantages to pump hydro, for example. So it's if one can think about the end, one can sort of plan for the future.
So does that mean that the integrated landform at Cal is getting a redesign as being an upper reservoir?
No, I think Cal is still a gold mine and will be a gold mine for the next 20 years at least.
Excellent. Questions in the room? I think we've got a couple of arriving mics. Have we? There's one up the back there. Any questions? Sorry. Just wait for a mic so everyone can hear you. Just a second.
Thank you, Jake. Very good. I think, Simon, almost everyone said that it's impossible timelines to do this 2030, 2050, different story, but what are the penalties? We've all legally bound all these countries around the world, and I think Australia's bizarrely is accelerating, and with innovation like yourselves and a bunch of other companies I know. But what's the penalties? I mean, are we going to be totally bankrupted by the EU or the World Economic Forum, or what are the penalties of not delivering our targets?
There we go. I think the biggest penalty is if you look at the science, climate events that are going to be very different to the climate events that we're experiencing today. So, if at extreme, we are risking the planet. And you are going to experience, we plan our mines for 1 in 100-year floods. Maybe that parameter is not going to be enough as we go forward, because maybe a 1 in 100-year flood is going to happen more often and be bigger than what we planned for or what we had in the last 100 years. Simon?
Well, the government has mandated the largest emitters in this country to reduce their emissions on a regular basis out to the future. So they're legally obliged to do that, either through cutting their emissions or purchasing offsets. So the government does have a carrot there as well as a stick.
I think the other thing is, as I think I said earlier, power prices are going up. Someone's going to pay for that. Carbon tax is a toxic government policy. So maybe it's going to be the users, but it has to be paid for by someone.
Thank you.
There's a question over here.
Yeah, Jake, just over here, other way. Just coming back to the acquisition that you did the other day, I'm just wondering, in terms of synergies, are they material or not?
We haven't built it into our base case, but there will be opportunities to get synergies out of it. It's only an hour away from each other. But we haven't built those synergies in. But clearly it's something that we'll be looking at. But I think, as Laurie correctly said, the best thing we can do with this mine, which is operating really efficiently, is to let it continue operating efficiently before we try and change the world.
There's one over here. Just wait for a mic.
Yep. Mick Buffy from Glencore. Look, great presentation, Jake. Really enjoyed it. I think I got the question, and there's no doubt, this is really going to be important for the energy transition, particularly with your variable renewables. I guess the question I've got, I noticed the 10 hours of of electricity supply, and the water is obviously running downhill. The question I've got is whether you can pump that back up overnight to be able to do that continuously every day, because the challenge we face, particularly with wind power, is wind droughts in June, July are up to 20 days. And as we know, solar generates for about 9 hours a day. That's why people mistake the cost of 9 hours over a total system cost. But can you generate that continuously day in, day out, or does it take longer to pump it back up?
No, you can pump it back up during the day. One of my colleagues here, Dean Thompson, who worked on the Snowy Hydro project, and he and Andrew Horvath is also on the table. They're leading the feasibility study. Dean describes this pumped hydro Mount Rawdon as kind of a workhorse type workhorse in the fleet. That it would be better in a portfolio of renewable energy assets, but you can get the water back up during the day. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and we often see negative pricing during the day, which is a profit opportunity to pump the water up the hill, of course.
I mean, one of the apps you should get on your phone, if you don't have it, is the National Energy Market Pricing, and you can get pricing of power in every state. And during the day when it's hot, prices are really cheap. So the problem is when everyone goes home and wants to switch on their air conditioners.
Over here.
Jake, Jim Wall, shareholder. A question about North Parks and the royalty, gold royalty arrangement. Obviously, there's been a bit in the press and shareholders about it. Can you explain how it works and how it's not a big factor?
Yeah, so there's a stream, like many mines have a stream, and I think it's 67.5% of the gold that we produce on our 80% essentially goes to the gold streamer. So we've bought it essentially with between 25 and 28,000 tonnes of copper production each year, and that's got a 30-year mine life and a little bit of gold, but the gold is 25 to 28,000 ounces as well. So there is that stream. It was obviously taken into account in our valuations. We're very comfortable that we have bought very, very well.
Jake, I've got a strong sense that you've been captured by the climate lobby. Far worse than that. I don't believe for a moment that you'll achieve FID by December 2024 without a huge protest from your shareholders and your bankers. And I also think you've been captured by what you call your partner, ICA Partners. So make it easy for us. Tell us how much you think ICA Partners have invested in the project and why you think that December 2024 is a realistic FID date, published here in a public forum, for a $6 billion project in a company that's valued in market at what, 4 billion? 4.5 billion?
7.
Okay, 7 billion.
Give or take 3 billion. So as I said, ICA have spent pro rata 50% of their share on the feasibility study. So we've each put in $10 million. So $10 million of Evolution shareholders' money has been spent. We are, I'd say, 4 months away from finishing the feasibility study. And we are well advanced in terms of negotiations with both offtake parties and potential investors into the project. As I said, Evolution's balance sheet is not going to build this project. But how much is the value of the project once you have an offtake party, a feasibility study completed, and a fully permitted pumped hydro project that is available to be developed in the next 6 years? So I think it's a massive value creation opportunity for Evolution.
Do you want to say something?
I would totally agree with that. I think there is a very deep pool of capital chasing exactly the sort of assets that Evolution is developing, and the engineering side of things is relatively straightforward. Once the contractual arrangements are put in place, I think there's going to be a very valuable asset there in a market that's going to be short energy storage. So I think the vision you've demonstrated to date will be realised once you do reach FID, and I've got no doubt that you will.
I just give you a reflection of where I think the market's moving and how deep the pools of capital you say are, Simon. I started my career at Macquarie many, many years ago, and I've always thought that they are very agile in terms of determining where the next likely profitable area is. So at the moment, I think they're under-resourced in the gold space, but there are a couple of very good bankers who come and pitch us on gold ideas. They came to see us about the pumped hydro project. There were 13 people in their renewable push. Goldman's are in the same place, as is ANZ. This, whether you're a skeptic or not, our government has committed us to this target. And once the government is committed, unless that target is changed, this has to happen.
Now we've got time for one more question if we've... any more? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for making your time available today. Thank you for the panel session, and it's been a pleasure to have you. I hope the exercise of being able to bounce ideas and correlate has been useful for you as well. So. But as the close of the lunch is here, I just wanted to say I've hosted 4 events now for the Mining Club, and today is the last time for me. I'd like to thank Julian for the opportunity, Finola for persuading me to look at it, Simon for all the technical stuff and the photos that he's done, and Mike for the speaker coordination. But particularly I'd like to thank Linda for all her event management skills that really make a day like today possible. So thank you all for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next year, the plan is at the moment we will have Pilbara Minerals talking with Calix on the 1st of February. Calix has a technology and a joint venture with Pilbara that takes Middling's product and upgrades it. So I will leave you in the capable hands, and thank you very much, gentlemen. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.